During Donald Trump's press conference today, he was asked about violence by white supremacists in the country. And unfortunately, he decided to reiterate a point that he originally made after the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. He basically said, look, I mean, the alt-left and violence on the left is also a problem. Violence on both sides. Take a look.
Define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying,
define it for me. Come on, let's go.
Senator McCain defined them as the same group.
Okay, what about the alt-left that came charging at it? Excuse me. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
This is Senator McCain's statement.
Let me ask you this. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. So, as far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible, horrible day. Wait a minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news. That was a horrible day. I will tell you something. I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you have, you had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. You had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit, and they were very, very violent.
Look, I'm going to go further here. He's done. So it's only a matter of time, man. Look, this is insanity. Excusing neo-Nazi murder in America with, well, the other side is just as guilty. The other side got run over by cars. What do you mean the other side? So he's saying that the other protesters, he's saying equal guilt. That's insane. No, look. There's two different things here. There's one is the facts of the matter, and then two is how it's going to be perceived. He's dead wrong on the facts of the matter. The one side rammed into the other side with a car, injured 19 people, and killed a young girl. Okay, there is no equivalency there. This is a definition of a false equivalency. Both sides do it. No, both sides didn't do it. Number two is as to how he got to this conclusion. He watched the tape. I guarantee you this, okay, I'll grant you that this part is my guess based on the evidence that we've seen of how he operates in the White House. Steve Bannon was in there with him saying, hey, look at that. I found one or two guys in the crowd from the other side who weren't doing the right things. Let's call it even. Oh, let's make up a new term, alt-left. It doesn't exist. That doesn't. You could say Antifa. That's a thing, right? There was most of the people there were incredibly peaceful protesters who were against fascism, right? But no, let's make up a term called alt-left, and then it'll seem like alt-left, alt-right. Everything's just equal, right? So these are appear, and it doesn't matter if it's Steve Bannon talking points. It's Donald Trump talking points.
President. Exactly.
He's the president of the United States. Now the second part of this is how is this going to be perceived? Even worse than the facts, because when every headline in America right now is Donald Trump blames both sides. And even people who voted for Donald Trump are gonna think, really? The non-Nazis
I disagree with you.
Were equally culpable as the Nazis.
I disagree with you wholeheartedly. You give Trump's base way more credit than they deserve, okay? I think during his campaign, when he said that he can shoot someone in New York and not face any consequences, people will still support him. I think he was right. I think he actually understands the pulse of his supporters. They don't care. They don't care. They love the spin. They buy into the spin. These are the same people who will turn around at radical Islamic terrorists who run people over and say, look at that, they're savages, right? But when people on the right do it, they somehow find excuses. By the way, I don't care about the demographic of who does it. I don't care if they're Muslim, I don't care if they're white. You don't run people over. And I don't care if the protesters are in the middle of the freaking highway. That doesn't give you the right to run people over and murder them, right? And then if you ever have the audacity to talk about US foreign policy and our use of drones that end up killing innocent civilians abroad and how that leads to hostility, oh my God, how dare you mention that, right?
So let me agree on the last part, and then I'm going to totally disagree on the first part. So could you imagine if after those horrific events in Europe where Muslim radicals ran over people in the streets in different European cities, a president came out and said, well, yeah, there was problems on both sides. What in the hell are you talking about? If they say, well, I mean, look, the British did get run over by Muslim radicals, and I guess that's a terrible thing. I'll wait 2 days before I say that's a terrible thing by Muslim radicals. But the British, I mean, did they have it coming? Did the Germans have it coming? Did the French have it coming? People would be justifiably horrified. And that's what he's doing here. Okay, so Anna, you're driving me to it. Trump is done. Okay, so he's done. He's not going to make it to 4 years. I'm calling it right now. We were leading up to it, and there was, this. I said from day one that if it went in the way that we thought it was, and I outlined how that would go, he wouldn't make it, right? And it has gone exactly like that, maybe even worse. And now this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Here's why. It's not that Anna's wrong, in my opinion, about some of his supporters. Yes. Anywhere from I'd say a quarter of his supporters, and not the quarter of the country, a quarter of his supporters are absolutely hopeless. You will never, ever, ever break through them. In fact, they like it, okay? So, and if you're offended by that, I don't care at all, right? So, because those people we see them with our own eyes, we see them online, we see them in the media, and constantly excusing white supremacy, etc. Okay, and a quarter of his supporters are already gone. Okay, and half of his supporters, that's the most important part, that are kind of in the middle. They're low information voters. They don't want to see it. They want the winking. They want to say Black Lives Matter is bad. They want to say that the Muslims and the Mexicans are bad, but they don't want Nazis killing people in America. And this is Trump shooting someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue while wearing a swastika. So it's the moms in Kansas and Iowa don't want to be associated with Nazis. And this guy's clearly making excuse for Nazis. The guy who ran over the girl is a clear Nazi. When he went to a concentration camp as part of a school trip, he said this is where the magic happened. He was a avowed Nazi supporter and a fan of Adolf Hitler. So when you're supporting and making excuse for clear Nazis who murdered people in America, look, even for Trump supporters, not all of them, but a majority of them, that's just a bar too low. And you could say I'm overestimating them, but besides which, remember, on the day of the election, he only had 37% popularity. He doesn't have to lose that much. He doesn't have to lose all of his supporters. He doesn't even have to lose a majority of his supporters. He just has to lose enough supporters where he will be overwhelmed politically. When the indictment comes down, every Republican in the Senate and now a lot of them in the House will go, can't wait. Where's my impeachment gavel? This guy who's been yelling at us this whole time, bullying us, and now going around supporting neo-Nazis, where's my impeachment gavel? I'll hand you one, because this guy's done. Watch the Young Turks commercial-free, download it or stream it, watch it any way you like at tytnetwork.com/join.